sound frustrated, it's because I really am. I really feel that this legislature has been a one-trick pony for years when it comes to tax policy. Every time we have two dimes to rub together, this is what we see. A big income tax cut where almost all the money goes to the people in the top 1%, and there are scraps for those in the bottom. And we always see a chart like this. In some years, it shows $5,000 to people in the top 1% and $40 to the poor working folks. Sometimes it shows $8,000 to people in the top 1% and $60 to people at the bottom. But the underlying story is pretty much always the same, where the wealthy and well-connected are showered with money, and there's scraps for everyone else and the people that need it. One year, ironically, the bill actually came up on Groundhog Day. This year, I guess it just metaphorically feels like Groundhog Day. I think these numbers speak for themselves. But I'm going to focus just personally. This bill saddens me for a number of reasons. At the first level, I want to talk about the timing and the priorities of this body. There are so many pressing needs in the state of Idaho right now, arising from underinvestment over the course of a decade or more. As we all know, we're the lowest education funding per pupil in America. We're hemorrhaging teachers who are grossly underpaid as compared to other states and other professions. We have a child care crisis that's leading to a workforce crisis. If businesses are leaving the state, it's not because of our income tax rate or our corporate tax rate. It's because they can't find child care for their workers, and they can't find an educated workforce, and they can't find housing for their workforce. We have crises in all of those areas. As we all know, we're one of only 4 states that have no early childhood education. We have a foster care system on the brink of collapse. We recently learned that a majority of EMS directors around the state can't get ambulances to people in a timely fashion when they're facing medical emergencies because they can't afford staff. We have over 1,500 bridges in need of repair at a cost of over $2 billion. I could go on for a long time. I'll stop there. But the good gentleman in his introductory remarks act like it was a done deal that we've solved these things. It's like, well, this year we've got all this money. We've solved education funding. We've solved infrastructure. So it's time for tax cuts. As we sit here, this came in before almost any committee had gavelled into session. There hasn't been a penny put into education yet this session. There hasn't been a penny put into infrastructure. We have solved no problems as we sit here today. Absolutely nothing. Anything is just aspirational, that maybe if there's leftover money after this giant $600 million tax cut, maybe then we'll get around to the schools. But this really bothers me. I feel like we should have rushed in and addressed education. We should have rushed in first thing and addressed bridges not falling down. It's just very frustrating that there's a feeling that, well, all of that stuff can wait. First things first, we got to cut $13,000 checks to millionaires. Let's get our priorities straight here, people, right? It's just distressing. I don't know if your mamas all taught you to eat your ice cream before your vegetables, but mine didn't. And I really think that giant tax cuts that predominantly benefit the wealthy and well-connected and most profitable corporations should get to the back of the line after we fund our schools and our bridges. So I would just put that to you and just say that personally I find it just depressing to see the lightning speed and single-mindedness with which this body has super prioritized this case study in trickle-down economics. But to move on, I guess, and this, I think the good gentleman from 29 got to this well, but, I think a lot about this in many regards. I'm concerned about the state of our representative democracy, and boy, do I feel that this bill is a case study in what's wrong with our representative democracy. Now, I'm always told we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic, but I don't think that means that we're obligated to totally ignore what the people actually want. I don't think that's what a republic means, that you need to put the needs and wants of the actual people at the very bottom of your list, which is kind of what this did. We have polling on this. We know what Idahoans want. Look at those BSU polls they do over the years that are balanced across the state. 68% of people want grocery tax relief. We know anybody who's opened their email or left their front door or talked to another living, breathing human being over the last 5 years knows that Idahoans want property tax cuts. That's what you hear. And you know what no constituent said ever is, I would like an income tax cut that gives $13,000 to people in the top 1% and 75% to working families at the bottom. I never got that email. I don't know if it got lost, I have to admit. Don't necessarily make it to every single email inbox, but I don't think that one's in there. Now, I know you're all thinking, here go the Democrats voting against a tax cut. They always want to oppose those tax cuts. Well, I want to tell you, I'm standing up against this bill today because I want tax cuts. Because I want tax cuts. It bears repeating, I am standing against this bill because I want tax cuts. I just want tax cuts that will actually help people and help the people that need it, help working families, tax cuts that correlate to what the people of Idaho actually want. And this bill is mutually exclusive from those, I appreciate the good gentleman from 34 speaking up in favor of the grocery tax cut. But these are mutually exclusive. This bill passes today, we ain't getting that. A vote for this bill today is a vote against elimination for all practical purposes of the grocery tax. Because there is no way, we got a lot of money this year, but we don't have enough money for that. We do not have enough money to meet the priorities outlined by the gentleman on the second floor when it comes to education and infrastructure and other vital needs, things that I think we do need to address, to do this $600 million and to get rid of the grocery tax. Ain't happening. So passing this today means you are telling your constituents, I would rather send $13,000 checks to millionaires than eliminate your grocery tax. And frankly, it's effectively mutually exclusive from meaningful property tax relief because it wipes out the most logical, obvious funding for property tax relief, which would be that Wayfair fund that's been dubbed the tax relief fund. If we didn't have that money in that Wayfair fund, if it were just treated like internet sales tax, all that money would already be going to property tax relief. Siphoning that away is eating it directly out of the prospects for property tax relief. So, I really urge you to see it through that lens. I know you're thinking, like, hey, who doesn't love tax cuts? You got to choose between tax cuts. And choosing this tax cut means you are ruling out other tax cuts. And I think those other tax cuts are more meritorious. They would do more favors to the people of Idaho, and they certainly are what the people of Idaho want. And those options will effectively disappear once this $600 million is out the door. So, I've talked a little about people and what the people want. I've talked a little about priorities, but I'm also just concerned about the policy here, which I really see as stunningly regressive. I know I've heard this narrative that, well, we're just giving people back the money that they paid, and if rich people get more back, it's just because they paid more. And how can you give money back to people who didn't pay taxes? Well, there's a lot there that's problematic. First of all, poor people pay plenty of taxes. They're paying lots of sales taxes, lots of grocery taxes, lots of property taxes, a whole lot more than $75 in taxes, I'll tell you. And there's an almost infinite number of ways that you could craft a $600 million tax cut. And it's, frankly, almost impossible to find a way to craft a $600 million tax cut that gets less money to the working families of Idaho. Almost anything else you do, whether it's grocery taxes, property taxes, restructuring the brackets so that only, higher earning people pay at that 6.5%. There's so many ways you could structure this that would actually get money to the people that need it. And it's extremely disappointing that this legislature has zeroed in on the one mode of doing it that makes sure almost every single penny of benefit goes to the wealthiest people and corporations in the state. So it's simply, we have so many options before us, so it's not like this is our only choice in how we can do tax cuts. But I think it's also just fundamentally not true that we're just giving people back the money that they paid. This tax cut is being funded in large part by that internet sales tax revenue. So let's back up a little bit on that, because this is incredibly important, and I don't think many people appreciate how the system works. And when they do, I've talked to Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, I can't find anybody who thinks this current system's a good idea. But the way it works is that, I buy this lovely jacket down at my local brick and mortar store, and I pay my 6% sales tax, and all that sales tax goes into a big fund, and 11.5% of it goes to the locals to pay for your sheriff and your DMV and your prosecutor and all the things they have to do. And the other 88.5% goes to the general fund, where most of it goes to education and other state needs. I buy this same jacket on Amazon, still pay the 6% sales tax, but not one penny of it goes to the locals, not one penny of it goes to the schools or the general fund. It all goes to fund a tax cut for millionaires. So the money for this is actually coming from sales tax. Now, it's pretty established by more or less every economist on earth that the sales tax is the most regressive tax there is. It's by far more disproportionately paid by lower income people than income tax is. And, I have some data for you on that. But the reasoning for that basically is the poor typically spend about 3/4 of their income on items that are subject to sales tax, whereas higher income folks pay about 1/6 of their income on items that are subject to the sales tax. So that money is predominantly coming from poorer people. So this is straight up a reverse Robin Hood scheme. This bill literally takes money from the poor and gives it to the rich. It takes money collected from poor people through sales tax and gives it through an income tax cut to the highest earning people. Why are we doing this? Who would want this? I think it's just we're relying on the notion that the public will be so overwhelmed by the complexity and boringness of tax policy that they'll never dig in and find this out. Nobody who understood how this works would like this. It's so upside down from what I think we should be doing. And so all in all, you know, I know this is an election year, and I'm sure in this coming election, Idahoans will be told how blessed and fortunate that they are, that they got the biggest tax cut in state history, and they got these beautiful $75 checks, which is what most of them are going to get. And I really hope they dig into the details and ask the harder questions. I hope they ask that question of who got how much of this tax cut. I got my $75. How much did the millionaire in my town get? I hope they ask what other forms of tax cuts could there have been, and how much would I have gotten under those? And what tax cuts didn't we pass because we passed this one? I hope they ask where the money came from. I hope they get to the bottom and learn how this internet sales tax system works. I hope they learn that it was actually the sales tax they paid that's financing the $13,000 cuts for millionaires. Because I just feel that if people understood the ins and outs of this, this would be a deeply, deeply unpopular bill. And folks just don't understand in the world out there how it works. And I hope they do, because this is not good policy, and it saddens me that we're heading in this direction. And I really hope that you today will stand for the true interests of the people of Idaho and shoot this down so that we have time to work through our education funding, our infrastructure funding, and get to some forms of tax cuts that actually help the working people of Idaho, which this does not.